All German tanks, equipment, trucks, supplies of all kinds, food, troops, and wounded sent back to Germany were transported by the Deutsche Reichsbahn or the German railways during World War II. Two sorts of tank transport trains existed: the Sonderzug or special train for light and medium tanks. This type of train had approximately 30 cars and carried maximum 20 medium tanks as well as personnel and other equipment. And the Sonderpanzerzug or special tank train for the heavy tanks. This type of train had 35 cars and carried maximum 20 heavy tanks or other equipment. The tanks were distributed along the entire length of the train. The train movement covered from 150 to 200 kilometers per day for long movements within Germany and about 60 kilometers per day in areas near the combat zone. The 56-ton Tiger tank entered service in late 1942 in independent heavy tank battalions. The Tiger, one of the most formidable armored vehicles of World War II, was an engineering miracle, but its sheer size and weight posed logistical challenges, especially when it came to transportation. One of the most critical aspects of moving these massive tanks to the battlefield involved using Germany's extensive railway network. The railway transportation was the only feasible method for moving the Tiger across long distances, given its weight and limitations of road mobility. Before a Tiger could be loaded onto a railway flatbed, several modifications and preparations were required. The Henschel factory, which manufactured the tank, provided a second set of tracks for the tank. The Marschketten or operational tracks were 725 mm wide, used with 24 road wheels per side. For rail transport, these tracks were removed, as were the 8 outermost road wheels on each side. The Verladeketten or transport tracks were just 520 mm wide, were then fitted. This reduced the tank's width to 3,142 mm, just narrow enough to fit the railway wagons the tanks were moved on. The tank's operational tracks and were transported on the wagon with the vehicle. At the destination, the whole process was reversed. The transport tracks were packed back onto the wagons after used and remained with them. The tank crews did not have to drive around with a second set of tracks. With a professional crew, the track change took approximately 20 minutes altogether. The main 88 mm cannon was a critical part of the tank as well, but its length and positioning during the transport needed to be considered as well. The barrel was typically traversed to the rear or placed in a travel lock to prevent movement during transit, which could damage the turret or the railway equipment. After the necessary adjustments were made, the Tiger was carefully driven onto a specially designed railway flatbed. The most commonly used flatbed was the type SS Sims 80, a 6-axle heavy-duty railcar capable of handling loads up to 80 tons, which was sufficient to carry a fully equipped Tiger tank. Once the Tiger was in position, it had to be securely tied down. Steel chains or strong cables were used to fasten the tank to the flatbed at multiple points, ensuring it would not shift during transport, which could lead to derailment or damage. The tank's weight made this step particularly important, as even minor movements could cause significant damage to the rail infrastructure. Once loaded and secured, the Tiger was ready for transport. The German railways had a vast network that stretched across occupied Europe, allowing tanks like the Tiger to be deployed to various battlefronts. However, due to the tank's weight and size, there were specific considerations that had to be addressed. The routes used for the Tiger tank transportation needed to be carefully selected, as not all bridges or rail lines were capable of supporting such a heavy load. Engineers had to ensure that the lines could handle the extra weight, and in some cases, reinforced or alternative routes were chosen. The weight of the Tiger and the stress it put on the railway infrastructure meant that transport trains often operated at lower speeds. Speed restrictions were put in place to prevent derailments or damage to the railway infrastructure. These trains would travel at around 30 kilometers per hour, particularly in sections where bridges or other weak infrastructure points were crossed. Given the strategic importance of the Tiger tank, trains carrying these heavy weapons were often given high priority. Other freight and passenger trains might be delayed or rerouted to ensure the smooth and timely delivery of the Tiger tanks to the front. Upon reaching their destination, unloading the Tiger followed a similar procedure to the loading process, but in reverse. Care was taken to safely drive the tank off the flatbed using ramps or railway station platforms designed for such purposes. The transport tracks were removed and the combat tracks were refitted before the Tiger was considered battle ready. Though railway transportation was the most efficient method, it also exposed the Tiger tank to significant risks. Allied forces, recognizing the strategic value of the German heavy tanks, frequently targeted railway lines with airstrikes or sabotage operations. The vulnerability of the Tiger during rail transport was particularly high, as the tank was immobile while on the flatbed and could not engage in combat. Allied fighter bombers such as the British Hawker Typhoon and the American P-47 Thunderbolt were notorious for strafing and bombing German railways. It is interesting to note that from 1944, the Tiger II or King Tiger heavy tank used the same system, except its tracks were 800 mm and 660 mm wide, so not compatible with the older tank. Now, when a unit requested wagons for a railway move, they had to specify whether they needed Tiger I or Tiger II tracks. For clarity, the Tiger I transport tracks were painted green and the Tiger II tracks were painted red. So the heavy tank battalion commanders were requested either green or red railway wagons depending on their tanks. The transportation of the Tiger I and II tanks via railway was a meticulously planned and logistically complex operation. Despite the technical and infrastructural challenges, the German military successfully employed rail transport to deploy the Tigers to key battlefronts from the Eastern Front to Normandy. However, the need for specialized equipment, careful preparation, and the inherent vulnerability of rail transport were constant concerns. The reliance on railways for moving the Tiger tanks ultimately underscores the tank's immense power and capabilities, as well as its operational limitations in terms of strategic mobility. This procedure highlights the immense logistical effort required to deploy heavy tanks, illustrating the intersection between advanced military technology and the practicalities of wartime infrastructure. I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you want to support my channel, check out the PayPal donation link in the description or consider becoming a member. To make sure you don't miss my future work, subscribe to my channel please and press the bell notification button. Thank you and see you in the next video.